ship. Blast them. Chewie, get us out of here!
Oh my, I'd forgotten how much I hate space travel.
Hello, Ken Spriggs here with my final build wrapping up before Wonderfest. And this is actually a return to a ship that I built previously in two different videos. Two of my how-to videos for the Bandai Millennium Falcon, the 1350. One video I showed how I did the weathering on it using oils, and the other video I showed how I lit up the cockpit and the gunner station and the engine using some 3D printed parts from Shapeways. So now I'm working on a diorama for that kit, and I got an idea from a video I saw on YouTube from Adam Savage Tested. I don't believe they built it. They were at a show, or one of the crew was at a show, and he saw the perfect grade Millennium Falcon, and they had built a display for it of it escaping from Mos Eisley. It was kind of a cutaway, and I always thought it was pretty cool. So I'm designing mine sort of after the same kind of an image of the cutaway of it, and then the Millennium Falcon in flight escaping. So, all right. And this will be the last kit that I will complete for Wonderfest. There's one other one I'm trying to work on, possibly the Discovery from Star Trek, but we'll see if there's enough time towards the end there. So, okay, so let's go ahead and get to it and take a look at the diorama for this kit. All right, so I am working on my next build to complete, and I'm going to create a diorama for this little guy here, which I featured in some previous videos on how to weather it, how to light it, and I have some 3D printed parts for the cockpit and the engine, the gunner station, so it lights up. So we got the engine. It'll probably be a little brighter once I get the like a fresh battery and some AA's on it. The cockpit, got the gunner station, got some weathering on it. So, all right. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a diorama of it, of its first, I guess, flight shot leaving Mos Eisley in the original Star Wars: A New Hope. So I'm going to be building this mostly out of styrofoam, and so I got myself a new toy from Hobby Lobby. It's a foam cutter. Barely see it there, but there's a little wire right there, and it's really cool because this piece comes out of it and it works as kind of a portable thing too. So it's really nice. I've already tried it a couple times. It cuts the foam really well. So the general shape of the Mos Eisley hangar bay, I guess it is, it's going to be square, but then there's a rounded section in the middle that's opened up, and that's where the Millennium Falcon is, and it flies up and flies out. All right, so I cut out a piece of foam board to give me the general shape that I want to do. And now what I'm going to cut out for the top of that is some of this green insulation foam. I like it because it's a nice dense foam material. It's nice and thick, works really well. So I'm going to cut this out, first of all, to the square to match that, and then I'm going to draw some shapes on it and cut that circle out of the middle. All right. All right, so this foam cut is pretty awesome. I don't know how I ever lived without this when I was cutting up foam before for dioramas, but let me just show you real quick how it works. So it works through really thick foam. Well, here's a little piece right here, first of all. Let me just show you. It's like a knife through butter. Look at that, nice smooth edge. And then if you have a thicker piece, this is what I'm cutting. It works through this too, it just cuts it right through like it's nothing. Look at that. All right, so that's really great. So let me show you what I have cut out so far for the basic shape of the Mos Eisley launch bay. All right, so I cut 4 sections. The 2 on the bottom and 1 on the top are the same general shape. The one in between here is recessed because that's kind of a recessed panel there. And these are still rough. They still have to be sanded and finished. I was just sanding block to do that. So as you saw from the previous stills, there was just some pictures of a build by I believe it was Adam Savage tested, or they showed it and they were doing a review on it of what they interpreted for the Mos Eisley scene. So I'm going to do the same general kind of a concept. Theirs was for the perfect grade, so it was a much larger diorama and very detailed. Mine's going to be the basic opening, and I'm going to have some side pieces set down a bit with some little buildings on it, and that's going to be the one that I'm going to do. Alright, so here's the basic shape. So what I want to do next is I'll probably get the 2 bottom ones glued together and then sand them smooth, and then that way I can get the recessed one sanded out smooth and see how far I want it to be, and then I'll go ahead and put the top one on. The bottom ones also have some little openings cut out that are like tunnels that go through, so I'll work that out too, and then start just kind of hashing this out and getting it put together. All right, so there's the basic shape of the building that the Millennium Falcon is going to be launching out of. And as you can see, so I have 4 layers. The bottom 2 and the top one are the same radius, but there's a groove in between and the third one, so that'll be set back a bit. Right now I have the bottom 2 glued together and I have the third one glued on and drying. I'm using some foam glue from Hobby Lobby. This works pretty good. It's called Aleene's Felt and Foam Tacky Glue. Works good for it. Starts to set up pretty quickly. I like it better than Elmer's glue as far as styrofoam is concerned. Alright, so I'll let those dry, and once that gets set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using, well, first, this isn't glued down to the foam board either. I'm probably going to have to do a bigger piece because I want to have like a lower section over on this side, maybe out to about here, and the same with over on this side. A few little buildings and some domes on top, that kind of thing. So, all right. So I will let those dry, and those pieces can be separate, and they'll have like a front on it, that kind of thing. So, and then what I'll end up doing is gluing on some thin styrene sheet onto this in little sections. I'm going to have it so like they're different panels, including at the top, and it'll come out and match up like it's a big stone or something like that. And put some holes in them for damage and that sort of thing. And then those I can put some detailing on, some piping, that sort of thing. So okay, so we'll let that set up for now, and then we'll get ready to go on to the next step of it. All right, so as I showed in the previous stills, I took a piece of paper and I traced off the perimeter of the inside of this and just measured it out, and then I marked off where I wanted the little columns to be and the little openings. There's little openings at the bottom, and there's a column between each one. Okay, and then I transferred it back onto the styrofoam and measured off along the edge, and then I just took an X-Acto knife and just cut out each of the openings, and I can even them out a little bit more at the end as well. And then what I'm going to do is use some foam board. Here's a piece that I cut out so far. And it's going to be like that wide for the column, and it's just going to go in between each of those openings. So it's going to raise it up, and then it's going to look like those are deeper as well. And of course I'll have a base on it. And then this will be even with this ledge right here. And then I'll be putting styrene in between each of these, so that'll even out those edges as well, make them look a lot more even. And there'll be styrene along this edge and inside here, and some different detailing. So probably won't cover these in styrene. I'll probably just leave them the foam board. Once it's painted, you won't really notice the difference. So okay, so let me get those cut out and get those all glued on as well. Alright, so I wasn't real happy with the length of it. It was a little too overpowering for the small little ship. And the opening was a little too large and elongated for the ship. So I cut out a section in the middle, which took out one of these and basically reduced these down. So I have one less opening, one less of these, and then put those together. You're not going to notice any of this seam or anything once I get the styrene over top of it. It's going to all blend in seamlessly. I also decided I'll probably not necessarily do this side over here. I might do just a little bit. Or actually what I'm thinking of is doing some kind of cylindrical parts coming up and make it look like some towers, that kind of thing. But it's definitely now much more accurately looking in scale with the ship. And the ship would still fit down inside there nicely. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm working on, you can see I have a piece of paper down there all on that one edge. I'm just measuring off some of the connections. The top is still not glued on. I want to get the styrene in that groove section right there first, while I can still get at it. And so I'm measuring off what the top and bottom are going to be, and then I can get those glued into place, and then I can get the top glued on as well. And then we'll start working on down below, okay? Alright, so I'm working on the covers for the little columns that stick out around it. So I took some styrene and I measured out the right size with some side tabs and just scored them with an X-Acto knife so I could just bend them and they'll be straight. Then I took my roller and I marked off 3 little points where I can put the little grooves at the bottom that they seem to have there, and they look like they're some kind of vents or something. They're kind of dirty looking, so I'll have some dark wash behind them or coming out of them, that sort of thing. So okay, so I'm getting these grooved out, and then once I get that marked, I just use my my tin snips to snip on both sides, well, all 3 of them, and then I score the bending point and snap them off. And then I just use this little flat needle file to clean up that groove. All right, so I have all the columns glued in place. Little notches in there. It's a bit tricky because you can't use a lot of glues with the foam, it just dissolves it. So I couldn't use my my Tamiyas, but the raised columns are actually foam board. So what I did was I put a little bit of the foam glue on the sides because they're foam. It's paper on the front, so I was able to just put some of my Tamiya regular cement over the paper, and that adhered the plastic on pretty easily, the styrene. So what I'm doing now is I'm cutting out sheets to go in between them to match those curves. And I'm going to have to use the regular foam glue again to glue them in place. Make them all the same height so that those openings at the bottom look uniform. And they're all the same height, so okay. I'm not going to put anything into those. They're going to be painted dark anyway, so they're just going to look like a darkened hallway. So I'm not worried about putting any kind of detail in there. All right, there we go. So I squared it off I cut out the back and the sides so that it would be a square, since I cut out that center section. Made it shorter, gave me more room on the end there, and reduced it. I'm going to have to reduce the back a bit too, because it's cut it down about an inch or so. So I'll have to cut that piece off. But it's a little more realistic now to the size of the Falcon. So if it were landed, it would have enough room, but it would be appropriately in there. So, okay, great. So I'm going to continue on with the styrene. I have the bottom half done except for that back part, and I'll wait till the end when I glue that together. I have to do the ledge there and the back wall of the ledge. And I still have not connected the tops on yet. I'll do those at the end. All right. All right, so after several hours of work tonight, I got all of the styrene on the inside of my little landing pad for Mos Eisley. I don't have any on top because that's going to be the last layer that's going to go on top like this. So there'll be that inset little part right there. And I'll have some styrene. I'm going to put some underneath first, so it'll be on the top of this, or the top of the groove. And then I'll have some up on here, and then going up onto here. The top I'm going to do like some large stones, like a section comes up, goes over another section that fills out that spot, so and so on. So, all right. So quite a bit of finagling, but I do have a nice rounded profile again. I do have those two little gaps right there, but that's not a big deal. I'm going to have some piping that's going to come down, and it's going to be sticking out. I put a little bit of damage right here and a little spot right there. I'll do some more of that as well before I get a final paint job. I have a piece of styrene there, as you can see. That'll be painted for the floor. I'm going to do a flat gold gray on it. And I'm going to paint that before I glue the whole thing down. So once I get this all completed, the next thing will be to let it all dry for what I have tonight. I'm going to put on some styrene on the bottoms of these, just on the edge where it's going to be seen. Then I'm going to get those glued down. And then I'll work on the styrene that comes up around it, and some styrene on the ends right here. And once I get that done, I'm going to go ahead and get it painted. And before I glue it down, and I'll get the floor painted as well, and then I'll get it all glued down. Just this part right here. Then I can still work on the back, and I can work on these parts and whatever I'm going to do on this side. So that's not a big deal. So I'm not going to worry about painting this side of it right now, or any of this side. I'm just going to get like the whole part here that you're going to see. And then that way I can get it glued down permanently and onto this. And then I can do the detailing over here and then just paint over on the side as well. Okay. All right, so looking pretty awesome. I have all my columns in place. I have some little caps on top of them. All right. And then I'm going to get it painted, and like I said, then I'm going to do a lot of weathering and put in some piping and things like that, and little bits of machinery probably. Okay. All right, so as you can see from the previous stills, I started putting on the sections on the top level that look like they're giant blocks, because that's how they look in the film. The rest of it doesn't really look that way. It looks smooth, but the top looks like they're actual separate giant blocks that were all just stuck on top of there. So what I've done is I cut out a piece of styrene, so each of the top ones are separate pieces, each of the sides are also separate, and just glued them onto to each end of it. So it looks pretty cool. It's nice and fairly straight and even, but it doesn't have to be perfectly even because they're supposed to be blocks. Now what I've done as well is on each of the, I left a gap between them. Sorry. So it looks like there's some natural grout there, and it'll have darker colors in there and then lighter colors on top. I also kind of rounded off the corners so they weren't pointed. Looks more like blocks. And then once it sets in there really well, I'll go back and sand these down a little bit rounded, the edges. And I'm also going to put a layer on the outside, but just on the top level. So it's going to go all the way around the whole thing. I also rounded it off, I forgot to mention. I don't know why I didn't think of it, but I had this all squared off because I was thinking of this being square. And then looking at the stills again, at these, I was like, wait a minute, where's the square at? Because it would have been a really big block in the corner. And I realized it wasn't square at all, it's round. So I went ahead and cut that off and smooth that out on the back. Once I cut it with my wire cutter, I just use a sanding block that I got from the dollar store, and it's just like $1. Really convenient. And there's a few rough spots, but you're not going to see those. They'll be cut off or covered over. The back was a little flat already, so I couldn't get the whole curve, so I'm overlapping it a little bit right there, as you can see. And I'll fill that in with some foam, so you won't see that little gap. So it's fairly the proper thickness. It's going to be a little thin in some parts and thicker on the end, but I think it looks pretty cool. And then once that dries and I get some more damage to it and some weathering, it's going to look pretty sweet, like big giant sand blocks. So okay, all right, so I'll let this dry overnight. Then I got to do the other side and do the front pieces here and the back, of course, and then that'll pretty much get this ready to be painted so I can get it glued down, and then I can do some weathering. I'm going to get that attached and everything before I end up doing anything with the side parts. I'm not sure what I'm going to do in these rounded corners, probably some kind of a tower or something, and the same with over here. Try to build it up a bit. So all right, coming along really nicely. So work continues feverishly on my Mos Eisley diorama. All right, so I've completed the large stone sections around the top as far as the top part in the inside. And that was some tedious work since I did each individual panel and cut it out and glued it on. I still have to do the back part, and I think that'll be a little easier. It's just one big smooth round part. And then I have to glue on some pieces to the front of here to finish that off. And that'll finish this entire interior as far as the surface. Then I just have to do some detailing with some piping and some damage and things like that. And then I'm ready to look at doing some painting on it before I get it glued on to the base. So, all right, let me finish that up, and then we'll go ahead and start looking at some detailing. So, I think it turned out really well. They look like individual stones. And once I get them detailed or painted with some different shades and colors, they'll look pretty cool too. All right. All right, there we go. And so after much work and styrene sheet, I finally have all of the front of this completed. I have the end caps on there. I have the top stones all the way around on the top. Okay, so all I have to do now is just finish this back wall, and I have some material that I got that I'm going to use for that. So let this dry overnight, and then once I get that completed, and I'll put that on the back of it. What I have, excuse me, is some styrene that supposed to be like some rough shingles for a roof, but it's kind of a cool pattern, so it's going to go along the back of it, and then this will be the same sand color that I'll have the rest of it and the different highlights and tones in it. So okay, so I will let this dry overnight, then we're going to get that on it, and then this will be all finished with the styrene part. So then I can just do some detailing with the piping. We'll get the floor painted, we'll get this painted, and then we'll start getting it glued together. Okay. All right, so I'm starting to do the detailing of some piping onto my Mos Eisley launch bay, and so what I'm doing is I rigged up, and I showed this in a previous video, a little device in order to nicely bend some styrene stripping, as you can see, and I did a bunch of little thicknesses. Just put a 90-degree angle in it. You can do other angles if you want to. But all I've done is I took a low temp glue gun, and I took out the mechanism, and I have it wedged in. Actually, it's melted in now, which is okay. It ruined this clamp, but it's just going to be permanently on it. But I just clamped it in, and I have the wire coming out, and I plug it in. And so it gets hot. It's not terribly hot, but it's warm enough that when I rub the stripping along it, I can bend it, and I can use the tip of this to bend it on the smooth aluminum. So it gets me a nice angle, as you can see, without melting it and pulling it apart. I was using a lighter before, but that was kind of tricky, and I was messing up a lot of pieces. But nice little selection there, so I'll be able to use these to create some of the detailing on the on my display here. All right. All right, so I've done quite a lot of detailing on my Mos Eisley spaceport pad. Really like that little, I guess it's a moisture evaporator back there. Some detail on the top. Lots of detail on the inside, including those little arm mechanisms. Got some little freight boxes. Try to get some better light on there. I got some tiny little people, which is supposed to be stormtroopers, coming out to see the Millennium Falcon off on its first voyage with their blasters. The tiny little figures I got from my local hobby shop. It's from Scene Master, and they're N scale. I think they're also from Walthers. They're super tiny. Now, even with the smaller ones, they were still a little too big, so what I ended up using, see if I can find another one. Right there. It's a child figure. You can see there with my finger. because the other ones are still too big in the scale for this diorama. So once I get them painted, I'll just do some dabs of color of white and black and some maybe something for the guns, like some metal or something, but they'll look like little stormtrooper figures because they're so tiny. They're very, very small. So I think they'll be pretty cool. So all of that detail is glued onto the styrene sheet that's going to be the floor. I also glued 3 little pegs, which I'm going to put probably like a little ball or a dab of 5-minute epoxy on top to make it look like a landing light kind of thing. Alright, so this is still not glued down because what I want to do is get that sheet painted before I glue this on. So what I'll do is these are all drying on there, they're all glued on. So I'm gonna tape off the spots where it's going to glue down, just those little parts right there. And I'm going to paint the whole thing, probably a darker color, and then I'm going to do a flat gold gray, so I can get some different imperfections in it, and I'll do some washes on it. And once that's done, then I'll just touch up the crate things, and these can be like some little boards or planks, some pipes back here, a couple more crates of things. I might do a few more. Some little crates right there. My little stormtroopers. Alright. And then that way they can just be painted, and the flat gold gray will be light enough that I can paint it pretty much any other color over it. So, okay. And then this whole sheet is loose, as you can see. And I have it drawn down where it's going to go on my base. Okay. And then what I'll do separately is to paint the rest of it. And I'm going to give that a dark color as well. Let me show you what colors I decided to go with here. Alright, so to get the colors that I wanted, I decided to go with some Auto Masters acrylics. Primarily because I already had the flat gold gray, which is kind of hard to find in other acrylics. To me, it doesn't really have that. It's probably something similar, but I really like that color. It's a nice light gray. If I get something darker down on it first and then put it on, it'll look kind of patchy, which is the way I want to see it, like concrete. And then what I'm going to do is I have a dark tan, which I can put down. I have a radome tan, which is a lighter tan. And then I have some other colors like a rust, which will be nice. I'll have that rusting up a lot of spots. A burnt umber, which I might put this into some of the darker recesses like the tunnels and things like that, so we'll see. Alright, so this is coming along fantastically. I really like how that's looking. Little details with the people and the different lumber and other boxes and crates and things. So it looks pretty cool. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and start doing some dark basing of some of the panels in the main structure. So I have it taped off on the bottom, the part that's going to get glued down. I have it taped off on the back, just underneath the that top row, because that's the only part that you're going to really see. Actually, I need to do this side over here. This side over here is going to be underneath. You're not really going to see it. It's not going to have anything on it. But these other ones, I'm going to put some panels on, so I don't want that to be covered in paint, so I can get it glued. So I'm going to go ahead and put down some dark tan into the different crevices and let that dry, and then we're going to put a coating of the radome tan over top of it. All right, so I went over with some of the dark tan highlights, and it's very stark right now, and that's the way it's supposed to be. I mostly wanted to get in between the grout for the big stones, get along the edges of the columns. Before that, though, I went over the bottom with some of the burnt umber, so that's nice and dark, as you can see. So that'll keep that part dark because there's no detail back there. It just looks like a darkened tunnel. All right, so that's pretty much dried. So what I'm going to do now is go over that with the Radome tan. It's a very light tan. Same thing, I'm going to mist it over, so there's going to be some incongruities in the paint. There's going to be darker spots and lighter spots, and it's gonna make it look a little more natural than just having a straight on tan. So okay. All right, and here's my completed tower. I put a lot of detailing into it. I didn't film a whole lot of it because I was just kind of doing it as I went. So I just used different pieces of styrene, stripping in pieces, and just kind of made it very detailed. So I didn't do anything on the back because you're not going to see it. And then for these little sections right here, I just used some pieces of styrene ladder that came pre-made. Excuse me. So it looks sort of like some windows. Okay, so I'm going ahead and getting this set up, getting ready to glue these pieces on. And we'll start getting this part of it put together so we can finish painting the rest of it and get the rest of the diorama together. Okay. All right, so I'm doing a final test fitting of the parts before I start getting them glued down. This is my completed tower. I have this positioned in. I still have to do the parts on top of it. I have this tower over here, which is drawn out. A little bit more detailing on that, but nothing major. And then I get that glued down as well. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the foam board around these parts, around to the tower, and then just square it off in the back. So, all right. Okay, so now I'm finishing up the back of this rounded wall section, and I'm only going to have that strip there at the top coming over to about that line right there, and then the rest of it's going to be solid, and it's going to go all the way around to the other side. And the reason I'm not having anything down below is because this part here is going to be hidden underneath this side section. So what I'm using for that is a styrene sheet that's already patterned. It's supposed to be like a rough roofing pattern, but I like the way it looks. And it kind of inspired me because it came in this sort of a tan sandish look, but I'm going to paint it anyway. So I'm going to, I cut out that section, and then the rest of this is going to go, and this is just the length of it that it comes in. So I'll have to use another piece to go further back. But this is the height of that section other than the wall part at the top, because obviously I'm not going to cover those blocks at the top. It's just going to be underneath. All right, so let me go ahead and get that glued in place, and I have a few pieces of styrene glued on to support the flat piece that I'm putting on the side section for the ground for that. Okay. All right, we're finally coming down towards the end here. I can see the end in sight. Still quite a bit to do here, but the basic construction and detailing is all done. So here's the side section. Some more buildings in there. A little building over here with some damage. A little building back in the back there. I have a couple of people. A little walkway across to the tower. 2 antennas, one in the back, one here in the front, or moisture evaporator, whatever it is. I used a material called Smooth Finish. It's from Hobby Lobby, Floracraft. It's really awesome stuff. It's a foam paste, and you can add a little bit of water to it to make it softer, and then it just dries to a solid finish. So that's what these bits are right here. Also use it to build up the doorways in the buildings, make them look a little more realistic. Now right now all of this is the odd colors. Once I get it blended in with some paint and get it detailed, it's going to look great. All right. So all this is glued down. I also have some detail on the front there. This is the remote control sensor that wires into the back, so I'll be able to use the remote control to turn this on. I just have a smooth side over here. And I cut out the parts over here to just be the round circle for the tower that's going to go up on the side of the main wall section. Let me show you that. All right, so I have that glued onto this wall part and it's drying. And all I did was put like some stripping around that part, some stripes down the sides of it, and put a little antenna on top. And it'll also be blended in with the sand color. So I think that kind of rounds it out just a little bit to even out the whole look. All right, so the only thing I have to do now, let that dry overnight completely. And then I'm ready to go ahead and get this whole area painted. This painted, and the back of this wall section painted. And I did have some paint come off, which I kind of figured would happen since I used some tape, but it's no big deal. I have to paint that anyway. So, because this whole wall in the back has to be painted. Those colors as well. Okay. So we'll let that set up overnight. Everything to dry completely. And then tomorrow I will go ahead and get some paint on the rest of the diorama. Starting with a dark tan and then the radome tan. And once I get that all done, then all I have to do is get some detailing, some painted detailing on. I have the pipe glued in with the wires for the Falcon. And that goes down and comes out through here. And that'll all be wired underneath, and the battery can go in the back. And then I'll just be able to use a remote control to turn it on. So, okay. So, getting down to the wire, I will finish this up, but it's going to be right at the last minute. It's already Monday. The end of the week is going to Wonderfest. So, I will be powering on and get this completed. All right, so we're coming down to the finish line here on this diorama of my Mos Eisley Millennium Falcon. All right, so I'm attaching the Falcon on. Had a little bit of a scare there. I was testing the wiring and I put a little LE SMD on it and it just didn't work. And I'm like, what's going on? Changed the battery, still didn't work. Fiddled around with it, just couldn't figure out what was going on. Then I tried the SMD on another battery and it wasn't working. So I'm like, I was happy, but just frustrated. So I tried another one and it worked just fine. So a little bit of a scare. It really would be hard getting all the wiring redone again as it's all embedded. So I tested all the lights in the ship. They're all working. So I have the wire coming up from the pipe. First thing I'm going to do is get the ship glued onto the post. And then I'm going to wire all the little wires together, tuck them in, and put the top on, snap it together. All right. All right, and here is my completed diorama. Sorry if I rushed through some steps and didn't show them, but I was kind of running scarce on time getting ready for Wonderfest. And then I'll show you my results of Wonderfest in my other video. Actually, I've already posted that, so if you want to check out, I won a bronze award for it, so very proud of that. But there's my little mini stormtroopers. Some weathering on the floor there. And a little tower to the right. A tower in the back there. Some weathering there as well. I think this side turned out really well. Some nice weathering, little teeny people there as well. Tried to make it look pretty grungy and dirty. The same with this. Use some oils to create some dirt and grime and streaks and things like that. Had to keep fussing with these. I kept breaking off, and this little one back here broke off multiple times. I've had to re-glue it. I'm sure it won't be the last. Okay, and then I fashioned this little plate. It doesn't quite match, but I'm not that worried about it. It's in the back and you don't see it, but this comes off. This whole piece comes out, and I have the switch in there and the batteries. And I'm just, there's a piece of styrofoam that's glued to this piece of styrene that fits into there. And I have a little bit of tape to hold it in place. So I can remove it and take the batteries out and change them. There's the back of it. And then finally the Millennium Falcon. So there's the cockpit lit up. Looking pretty sweet. The gunner station. And the engine lights. I like how the engine turned out. I like how it's, you can see a bit of the grills, but not really defined, because you didn't really see that. Sorry, there we go. Because you really didn't see that in the original trilogy. You just had mostly just white, but I wanted a little bit of it. And then I just have like a little bit of blue. It's more white than it is blue, which is also unique to the original Star Wars. So, okay. All right. So very pleased with how that turned out. Lots of work into that to get it to where it needed to be. But very pleased with my award that I won at Wonderfest. So, okay. Thanks again to all my new subscribers. I will be working on the Star Trek Discovery. I already have started it. That'll be my next video upload, and then I'll be returning to my Borg Discovery. All right, thank you.